Hi guys, so before we get into today's podcast, I just want to share with you some of the information about the Nature Premium campaign which has been launched by the Forest School Association, and this audio comes from the video produced by Lily Horseman.
While in lockdown, we've had over 100 days of limited access to family, friends and the natural world. We have a plan to reconnect children and nature. The Nature Premium campaign is asking the government to help schools get children outdoors, and we need your support to do it. Scientific research shows that when children spend regular amounts of time in nature, this has a positive impact on their mental health, their physical health and their long-term success. In 2012, the government recognised that children's physical health is important, and a sports premium for schools helped get children more active. We want a nature premium for all children. To help us achieve this, we need you to sign the petition, to share the message through social media, and get your local MP on board. If the Nature Premium campaign is successful, our children will have the best chance of getting out and really flourishing. To find out more about the science behind the Nature Premium and how you can get involved, visit www.naturepremium.org.
You're listening to the Forest School Podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Sutherland.
I'm just getting comfy. Okay, there.
That's much
Right.
better.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, just stay completely still.
Okay.
Hello.
Good evening.
We'll just keep saying hello, shall we? Just every 5 minutes we'll just go hello, and then one of these will be the
the
right
actual
one.
start. Can you hear this?
Yes, and do you know what? Everybody loves mouth sounds on a podcast, don't they?
Just love the sound of my peppermint and licorice tea.
Oh God, that's a disgusting noise.
Um,
Why are you making that noise? God, that is
minute.
horrendous, Gemma. That is absolutely foul.
Well,
Spitting it on the floor now. What an absolute animal.
done.
Be
Finished.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can slightly professional.
No.
Pretend this is in some way related to your job.
Can't.
No?
Can't.
Shan't.
Can't and shan't.
Oh, we have
Today,
been,
we're
yeah,
talking
today.
about clay.
Applications for Forest School training are now open at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
About clay.
Did anybody else talk, respond to your mad
Yes, I
thing
did.
on the internet?
I saw some people have talked about clay and about what they did, and it's just a very exciting. Also, I've been putting on our social media a few different pictures of
Clay.
some clay stuff that we did from, I was going to say different angles, but that makes it sound like different photos. What I mean is different aspects of what we've been doing with clay, and I've just sort of been reflecting on it myself and just thinking like, God, clay is amazing and cool, and we should talk about it. Because we are, well, I guess the first thing is to say is that we are in a very, very beneficial, lucky, good part of the country for clay. Devon is hilly as you get and absolutely stacked full of red clay.
Yeah.
You dig down about a foot in Devon and you're going to hit big old red clay soil.
Yeah. In my garden, I've got like yellow clay as well. It's weird mix of like green sand, which is like a kind of sandstone, but it's turned to liquid when it gets wet. It's really, really soft, and then when it dries out, it goes hard. And then intermixed with that is some like really funky yellow clay, and it all used to be underwater, and you find fossils in it still.
No way.
Amazing. Yeah, even though it's really high up on a hill. But yeah, most of it is red, isn't it?
Is that to do with, because you are in your house and village are sort of historically very heavily mined, aren't they?
Yeah. Whetstone mines.
Whetstone mines. And is that something to, is the yellow clay anything to do with that, or no? It's just a...
No, really. I don't know. I don't know whether that is the whetstone when it gets wet, whether it's got a clayish tinge to it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I mean, the reason that we are kind of thinking about clay so much, I think, at the moment as well, is because our group, I'm going to say group singular, because we've just got one at the moment, haven't we? Is big into clay. Like it has been child-led, and the children have led us there, and we've gone, okay, cool, you are really into clay. You're really into digging for clay. So we've had our kind of digging hole on site for what, like 3 years now?
Yeah, a couple of years.
And it's always like popular, but I don't think it's ever been as popular with our current group as it has been recently. No,
we should probably clarify for people listening, because not everybody has seen photos of our site. When we say digging hole, it's not like a sandbox. This is a like 2 meter by 2 meter square trench that goes down about 1.5 meters. Like the kids have cut like
not 1.5 meters.
At the deepest bit, I think it does. They've cut like a set of stairs into the side so that they can get in and out. Like it's a bit. What I mean is, it's not a like mud kitchen with a bit of a muddy puddle. Like we have.
But it started out like that.
Yeah.
It started small, and then we didn't dig it that size so the kids could play in it. We dug. Can you remember even how it started?
Yeah, we naively said, I think we should get some clay out of the ground, and we'll make a big like green man face. And we said like, oh, we'll just do it. And it was with a homemade group, and we went, oh, we'll just dig the clay out. And we sort of started digging, and then I think about 2 hours later realized that we were nowhere near clay, and that we were going to have to dig for long. And it's with all things in forest school, it's been an interesting balance between that very adult reaction to go, I know how I can make this more efficient, or I know how I can make this more effective. And then actually having to go, but by doing that, I will remove about 8 weeks of play. If I just come in and go, don't worry, I can, for 100 quid or 200 quid, I can hire a digger and I can excavate that. And then they'd have a hole, and you have to go, no, they don't want a hole. They want to dig a hole.
And actually, they don't even really want to make the green man face. They don't actually really want to dig at this stage. They just want to dig. They want to dig and like embrace the role play that comes alongside that, and the different kind of, oh my God, man, it's another example of my work play, playing at work.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my PhD on this one day, I swear. You
just submit the podcast. At some point, just submit the podcast and go, we've rambled about it for coming up for,
Have I though? Have I actually rambled about it? I probably
For people that might have listened, this might be somebody's first episode. They might be going, what the shit is this?
Oh, a snail.
Go on, explain your work play.
My work play thing is a type of play that I've observed for many a year, because I'm quite old now, and doesn't seem to neatly fit into any of the Bob Hughes play types, of which there are 12, I believe. What makes this kind of special is that the children involved, all the players involved, are definitely like working in inverted commas, and they might not necessarily have like happy faces. So a lot of the definitions of play that you might read are like, how do you decide if something is play? Well, the people involved have smiles on their faces, and they're skipping about, and they're happy. This is not like that kind of play. This is like sweaty,
stressful,
like big muscles working, either big arm movements or big leg movements, lots of like heavy lifting or pulling, and lots of like shouting at each other and going, come on, we need more of the thing. You go that way, I'll go this way. Okay, no, work harder. No, stop. You know, all of that kind of like heightened senses.
It's intensity, isn't it?
Intense. And to the point of like, actually they're looking quite uncomfortable, but they're completely absorbed in it. And it's often for like a common good. So you might hear like, we need more food for the winter, or we need to build the house, or the boss is going to sack us if we don't work fast enough, which is what we had this week in the Digging Hole. So that element of like quite an adult, like quite a lot of responsibility, like a lot of need going on.
And you should make it clear that it is almost playing out the most stressful parts of being an adult,
or being human,
But when it's like, we need, God, guys, we need the food. They're collecting pine cones. They're not like, this isn't like a group that we're starving or anything like.
Yeah, it's not when they're actually cooking pancakes for real in the woods. Like I first noticed it in the Science Museum with this thing called the grain machine, which had like grain going around a circuit with different ways of moving it. So it had like a conveyor belt with lots of handles, and then an Archimedes screw and a bouncy kind of thing and a bucket lift, and so loads and loads of turning handles all over the whole big circuit. It was huge. And so kids that had never met each other before would be suddenly engaged in this like team effort, and nothing happened. Like the grain just carried on going around in the circuit with no end. But I guess because it was grain and it looked quite foody, even if kids might not have necessarily seen grain before, then it was always like, we need more food for the winter, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, so.
But that's one of the good things about, I would say, our setup, and I've recently been in and kind of expanded it, is that the hole that we've got is only big enough really for 3, maybe 4 children to kind of effectively dig in. But at times we've had groups of 10 or 15 all involved, not necessarily digging, but it's like, okay, you pull the buckets up. Okay, I'll be the one that empties it. Right, I'll be they love sitting there, and we've got these big, I don't know what you call it. It's like a archaeologist's sieve. It's not like a cooking
gardening thing, isn't it? It's
gardening,
soil in the garden, yeah.
And they sit there and they will grate chunks of clay against it until it's a fine powder, and that's the stuff. That's the real fun. It's like, it's slightly like drug dealing. Like that's the fun. That's the and they'll tell you like, that's the powder, man. Yeah, we got to get that powder. And they.
It's amazing, isn't it?
But that it can involve such a wide, and quite often they will rotate round a bit in a way that, you know, sometimes they have periods of time where, as any children will, they go, no, this is the new thing, like the new tool, and I'm never going to give this up. But quite often, once that's kind of worked its way through, if you like, then they just they do go, oh, I'm a bit tired from digging. Does anyone want to do this? Because I'm going to go do some grating now. And they just naturally move around in a way that, I think possibly because it is such a stressful experience and such a gross motor experience, they can't do it infinitely. Whereas if I go completely the other way, something really addictive like a video game, it isn't physically taxing. You don't get out of breath doing it. You don't. It's just like more. I can stay on this. I can do this forever. I don't have to give it up. But the digging is like, no, I'm actually knackered. I've got to move this aside.
As you say, they don't necessarily walk away and leave that area and that play and that realm. They're still involved. They're still interested. So even if they pass the spade to somebody else and they're grating, they're still interested and engaged in what's coming out of the ground. They're still going, oh yeah, you've got some really good red stuff in that corner. Keep going, you know, and encouraging each other. And then they'll have like little. Sometimes it will evolve into an actual creative process. Like we've made some bricks, haven't we? And various different types of concrete in inverted commas, and try like mixing different ingredients. So there was some sand lying about for a bit, wasn't there? And that got mixed in.
Oh, can I tell you? This is a side note. I know somebody who put on their social media that they had bought a kit. So you know these like art kits that you buy from like. In the UK, we've got a thing called The Range or Hobbycraft. You buy these like plaster of Paris, I don't know, figurines, and you do them whatever. So this kit was like that, and it was like 20 quid, and it's called the Forest School Potion Making Kit, and it is like a little sachet of beetroot powder to make stuff red, and a little bucket and a spoon. And I just looked at it and was like, oh. And this person had done it inside their house. Like they hadn't brought mud in, they'd brought some like play sand in, and they'd done it in like the most controlled.
It's called the Forest School Potion Mixing.
It's called the Forest School Potion Kit, I think. I will try and find a link to it, but it was very. And then because I think I'd just come off a day where like our own children had come home like, clay all over their faces and like knackered from digging and all this stuff, and then they were like, oh, I want to do some mud kit mixing, and I was like, oh, okay, this is different ways of approaching the same play, isn't it?
Yes.
But the mixing thing is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it is quite often that kind of mixing stuff, and this is where I would say it might differ from a lot of early year settings, in that you might set up like a mixing station, but if the kids put too much water in, something is finite. Do you know what I mean? So if you make like a sloppy mud, messy puddle, then that's it. You've used the mud that was set out on the table. You've used the all of the sand from the sand pit. But like we have multiple containers of water, so I guess that's finite. But really, you just dig more out. You know what I mean? Like, and because the hole has got clay, but it's also got a bit that's sandier, and they just experiment rotating that round, like, oh, a bit of mud, no, a bit of sand, no, get some leaves in there, oh, make sure all the rocks are out. Like, it is.
Yeah, and sometimes there is more fascination with the rocks, isn't there? So they've done, because there's lots, it's like a mixture of something that I don't know and chert that comes out, and
chert is like flint for people that aren't geologists.
Flint is a type of chert, or chert, I can never remember which way around it goes. Anyway, so yeah, there's often quite a lot of fascination with the rocks, and like, oh my gosh, I hit the rock by accident with my spade and a spark flew off.
Oh, yeah, incredible.
There's so much going on, and so many like natural questions and learning that comes out of it. So obviously there's loads of historical stuff that comes up, loads of like flint, oh, look at this, it could have been a flint tool, and how, talking about flint knapping and that kind of thing. And it's just so primal, isn't it? It's like really primal. Loads of like geology, like observing the different colors of the stone that comes out and talking about why that might be. And I think it would serve us well to read up a bit ourselves on that and have a few more like answers.
I had a really nice moment the other day where, so sometimes we talk about setting up invitations to play, and so that whole, because we before now have had lots of different groups on the site, and the groups use it in different ways. And I had this amazing moment where one group had done a bit of play, and it had completely inadvertently set up a play invitation. So a group that came, a group of early years children that were there before lockdown, so we're like 4 months ago now, because they didn't really have the physical ability to dig for a long time or do whatever, their play quite often ended up being, when it was full of water in the winter, they'd just chuck stuff in and see the big splash, and like it was really good. We all stood around the side, splash, and at some point one of the kids must have picked up like a big bit of wood that was half charcoal, so it was from an old fire or something, and they'd thrown it in, and then over the months bits of soil had fallen on it, whatever, which meant that last week one of the kids who was coming was digging, and she found a half charcoal bit of wood, and she decided it was a burnt Viking ship that had a king in it, and she immediately then was like, there must be treasure, let's find the rest of the boat. And she like dug it, and I was watching it just going like, oh my god, this is like a little plaything that a 4-year-old set up for you by accident. Like you could have done it, couldn't you? But it wouldn't have been the same as like just completely at random. And I think that's one of the things that, have you heard the stuff that says that like the most addictive things in our lives are intermittent rewards? So if you always get a reward out of something, it's boring. If you never get a reward, it's boring. It's the ones that like give you something every now and again. And mining and digging is that intermittent reward. You could dig for 2 minutes and find something. You could dig for an hour and find something. And like, I think that is what brings a lot of kids back. Is it is sort of like gambling.
Yeah. We have been having a look at how to kind of process the clay, haven't we, recently? To make it into really nice, smooth pottery clay, because we have been buying it in when we've wanted to do stuff with clay. We're like, okay, well, you know, we really could be refining the stuff that we have on site. And there was interest in it. Like, we showed them a film of how to do it, didn't we? And sieving it and hang up in a pillowcase and stuff. And some children were really interested in doing it 2 weeks ago, and did the first stage, and then you had to like leave it in water, big bucket of water, to all sink to the bottom after you've sieved all the extra stuff out. And then the following week, I was like, okay, right, we need to like get on the next stage of processing the clay. Oh, the bucket that it was in has tipped over somehow, and it's still on the floor. And I was like, oh no, they're going to be really upset. They're going to really, really care. Of course, nobody even remembered. That was not the important thing. That was the important thing for me.
It was a little Gemma project.
An adult, and that was my end goal, you know. But that end goal for them was just like both kind of irrelevant and too far away. It was just like, I still will do it. It'll be one of those things that I'll do in a very obvious place, and perhaps like talk to myself about what I'm doing quite loudly, so that some children might go, what are you doing? And I'll be like, oh, well, do you want to help? Take this. But it's not going to be something that I'm like, right, come on, everybody, we need to do this thing, because clearly it was like my project. But the end result will be beneficial to everybody when we've got loads of like pure red clay that is really workable and lovely and tactile, and we can actually fire it. That will be really cool. So we have got a kiln as well, like, that we haven't talked about.
I think I was going to say that one of the things I think is interesting about clay, and particularly the way that we have clay in its being completely open-ended, is the projects are so quickly, they go from absolutely enormous to, and then realizing the scope of that. So like, we had a little it was like a load of sycamore that we'd cut down, and we sort of framed it into a house. But the walls, I may say walls, they weren't walls, but between the posts was probably 2 meters long and 1 meter high, right? So you imagine a sort of gap that size. And the kids decided that they were going to make clay bricks, and were going to brick not just one wall, but 4 walls. And it was really interesting to watch it, because, you know, again, it's like we said earlier about, you know, you could go, okay, we'll dig out the 4 dumpy bags of clay that's going to need, and then we'll process it. Or you just go like, okay, if that's your project, I'll be nearby, but you crack on and you do whatever. And just watching it go to like, but their enthusiasm for it didn't change. What it went from was, wouldn't it be amazing if we made a wall? And at the end of the day, they went, wouldn't it be amazing if these 2 bricks dried for next week? Yeah. They naturally just scaled it down and went, do you know what? Yeah. That's actually the goal. And that was a really interesting experiment in like, if you had set up a group and you as we as an adult had come in and gone, right, guys, the goal is X, then that is really hard to move. But because the goal was sort of set in play, it was just like all the rest of clay, it was completely flexible. And once they realized that like the bricks were the hard bit, then they started making concrete, because actually the concrete was the fun bit then. Or like they just started, do you know what I mean? They just, I think lots of our children particularly have watched, and they're really big, aren't they, on YouTube? They get millions and millions of views, these like primal survival primitive buildings, primitive technology. And I know primitive technology was kind of the forerunner, and now there's lots and lots of copycat channels. But essentially it is, what are the limits of what you can make with kind of clay and Adobe and Cobb? And there are like, you know, 4-story buildings now, and underground swimming pool with natural Buddha, whatever, and watering slide. I saw a really good one the other day where they polished the water slide that went down under the hill.
Wow.
And at the top of the slide, they were hanging a clay bucket with holes underneath. So it was a bit like a slip and slide. It was dripping slowly and keeping the slide wet. And it was like,
wow.
Oh my God. And you watch that and you immediately go, oh my God, that was a 15-minute video. I bet if we went in the woods, we could make that thing. And then, 5 minutes into digging, you're like, yeah, probably leave it.
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's I don't know, I just get a vibe that whole process you've just described of having a dream of what you're going to do that comes from you, and then knowing you've got, a bit of adult help if you need it, but you've got all the tools you need. And then that internal realization, as you've just described, that actually that's not quite doable, but what is doable, instead of like just going, oh, stuff it, I can't do it, like adapting your own physical involvement in it and the end goal, and doing all that internally and with other people.
Yeah.
What is better learning than that, really? I mean,
it makes me think about there's a thing that early years settings have to do here, where you have to have learning prompts and a text-rich environment. And there's a real difference between, I think, some places you go and in a mud kitchen digging scenario, I can imagine, and I have seen some settings that will write, can you make a castle? And I've seen some settings that just go, what can you make with clay? And they might, on the face of it, look like, oh, they're 2 learning prompts. But the second you engage with it, you kind of go, one of those is very different to the other. And I mean, even the, like, if I was going to get real education wanky, like tear the system down, even the question of what can you make negates the process, because it kind of says, what is your end product in a way.
Yeah, it's making the whole like tactile experience, the whole visual experience of it, the sensory experience of it invalid, because unless you're making something, what are you up to? Like, that's the point. Which is something I kind of wanted to talk about, because I mean, what you're also learning about is that the property of that stuff that's come out of the ground in the place where you play every week. So they will often comment. So yeah, again, you might have in your head, right, I'm going to sort of see if we can do some pinch pots today. But actually, so many children are way more interested in the fact that the clay is beginning to have cracks in it, or it's beginning to get really hard. And it's just really hard to do that because it's got cracks and then they're realizing it's drying out. And so that's the interesting thing. It's like, whoa, what? And the fact that it's physically like the earth, you are playing with the earth, and what happens to the earth when you interfere with it. Like, whoa, that's so deep, man. It's like a metaphor for human existence. What are we doing to the planet, etc.
Was it in our other podcast with John Crean, it took me off guard when he said we are all made of soil or something. He said something along those lines in a very John way, and it took me off guard, and it sort of sat with me for a while, because he was saying, obviously, we all not own, or regardless of what your diet is, it comes from the earth. At a certain point, it was soil that was made into a plant, and then either you eat the plant or the plant goes into an animal and you eat the animal. But just that he was like, oh, we come from the earth. And I was like, poof, brain exploding. And it does lead itself into it, doesn't it? It's that, like, it's recapitulative play, but in the way that all the reading I have done about sort of hunter-gatherer societies and more primitives are a funny word, isn't it? But it always strikes me that they function a little bit more like a rugby team, which is a weird comparison to make. But what I mean is, have you heard the analogy that, like, on a football team, essentially everybody needs to be doing pretty similar things? Some people are up here for something. But on a rugby team, you need big, heavy, slow guys to do some jobs, and you need quick, whippy people at the end to be doing fast stuff, and you need everybody in between. And so it functions because everybody can have a job. And in the same way, you know, like we were saying, there's a job for everybody. It does bring a community together in a way of like, right, this comes from the ground, and we all have different skill sets that we are bringing to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very, what's the word? Like, it's a great kind of leveler. So you might, you know, we've done it endless times with toddler groups, haven't we? Where even the tiniest child can do something like press some berries into a bit of clay or make some holes with their finger, and everyone will be like, hey, check that out, you made a thing. And then adults next to them, it'll be one of those things, won't it, where the adults are like, oh, can I have a go, can I have a play? I'm like, yeah, of course, like, you are here too, you are alive, you're present, like, yeah, join in. And so many people will say, oh, I haven't played with anything like this since I was at school, I used to love this. And they'll just make a little thing and be really proud of it. Like, we've had some parents have been super like, oh, my elephant, do you remember my elephant I made? Like, yes, I do, because I remember how amazingly proud you were of it, even though it was just like a little casual sit around the fire and, you know, play with a bit of clay. You were so chuffed with that elephant that it's going to stay with me forever.
And there is something that doesn't stop when you're a child, in that I guess it's similar to, if I'm going to talk about Bob Hughes again, but that mastery play, that kind of manipulation of your environment. But I've heard people say that, like, human history was, in terms of what do you want to leave, for a long time was like, well, I'm basically going to leave nothing. And then we had this weird industrial period where, let's be honest, lots of rich white men went, I am going to absolutely carve my name into I'm going to carve some faces into a mountain at some point. That's what I'm going to do. And then now we've moved to a point of like eco burials and like, let's decompose again. But something about pushing your hand into clay and seeing your handprint or your thumbprint, like, that's like in the same way that I can imagine someone getting some red ochre inside a hollow bone and spraying their handprint on those walls in France and going, that's my hand. Like, that experience is the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
And that's massive. That's just, you know, to I don't know, it makes you, it sounds weird, but it kind of makes you feel a bit like self-actualized as a person. To be like, oh, I exist. I can implement things on the world.
Yeah, and I think that's what I did a lot of clay work at school. So for art GCSE, I made like a massive clay sculpture thing that then like, the reason I liked doing it, I think, was because it's easy to work with once you know how clay reacts. So you don't necessarily have to like measure loads of things or plan it massively, because it's so tactile and it's just sort of like, oh, how is it responding today? Okay. And it's so dependent, as you said, on your hands. Like the shape, if everybody tried to make the same clay shape, it's always going to be different because our hands are different and the amount of pressure you use is different. And the fact that you can make something quite large without really any special tools even, it's just like, there's a lump of stuff, just shift it and mold it into a thing. And it was like this kind of reclining mother figure, but very stylized and simplistic, like cradling a baby. And I spent ages, it dried out to like leather hardness, and then I polished it with the back of a spoon and I glazed it and all the rest of it. And then I went to pick it up. It was like Friday night, kiln goes on Friday. Oh, it's gonna be ready, so exciting. Oh, it's a box full of bits because it exploded. Because I did not prep. I was so excited and prepped it enough, and there's obviously some air bubbles in it, and okay, I'd taken some pictures of it, so it was all right. But then I recently saw a picture of something in a museum that was quite old, and look, the flipping same as the flipping thing that I made.
You failed just like the old people failed.
I really need to find it because I don't know how old it was, this thing in this museum. But anyway, I was a bit freaked out because I was like, wow.
And it's interesting that, isn't it? I mean, one of the things that we say quite often is that we really like is that, I mean, partly financial reasons, but if the kids leave a load of clay out on the table and you, for whatever reason, don't tidy it up, sorry, that sounded like a real dig. That sounded like I was having a go at like, for you don't tidy it up. If we don't tidy it up and it dries out, you just go, okay, put it in the water, give it a bit. It will be again, unless you fired it. And I was thinking, actually, it's very different because I think lots of people would go quite early in forest school, would go to whittling. And whittling is a very unforgiving, if you've cut it away, you've cut it away. We're not getting the super glue out and sticking it back on. But if, in terms of fine motor control, if we did stuff with clay, the forgivingness, that's not a word, Lewis, the sort of how forgiving clay is means that you can make mistakes and experiment in a way that you can't with whittling.
Yeah.
So I know whittling is kind of a lot more of what people think forest school might be about, because they think that it's closer to bushcraft and that it's, it's a cool thing, it's a blade, it's got a bit of risk and it's got its place, don't get me wrong. But for lots of children, clay is a more appropriate place to start.
Yeah.
Sort of, particularly children who might, I'm trying to be really careful here, children now might have had less access to playing with clay and mud before they enter the school system, and say a few decades ago when it probably would have been the norm that children played in the mud wherever they were. Now it's like, oh no, you want to get kids how to, ready for writing, you want to get them ready for whatever. Yes, you can spend a load on like a silly putty and Play-Doh for using the, or get some clay and make and experiment and do that thing over and over again. But for people listening, I have two tips for people that are listening and going, yeah, let's go. As I'm assuming we just inspire everybody and they're immediately going, yes, clay tomorrow, that's what we're doing. Two things. One, don't use air drying clay outside. Okay, might seem like a good idea. It's full of plastic.
Yeah, it's full of like nylon threads that hold it together. Although I bought some from like Aldi or Lidl a while ago, small packs just for home, and that doesn't have any plastic in it because it is just clay. Okay. When they say air dry, they mean it goes hard in the air.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you can get it without the thread.
And the second tip is for people. I got this from I did actually it was a course I did with Richard Irvine when I did whittling. So you never know what you can learn on a course, do you? I went there on a whittling course and I was sat next to a bloke that did pottery, and I ended up just chatting to him about pottery all day. So sorry, Richard, I did a little bit of whittling, but actually I was talking about pottery for a lot of the day. And he said that you should be able to, I can't describe, how would you describe this action for people that can't see me?
Cupping your hands together like you were going to make an owl noise.
Like I was going to go.
Yeah.
Cupping them together. Children should be able to, and adults should be able to completely cover the amount of clay they've got that they're working with. In their two hands. In their two hands. And we have several children who will go, more, I need more clay. I need more clay. I need more clay. You go, okay, you got to make your thing smaller because that's the amount of clay that you can work. A big cumbersome board. If you imagine trying to work with a football size of clay, it's just not going to work. You watch, potters do it and they kind of go, here's an ear, put the ear on, do the other ear, put the other ear on. They're never working with the whole thing really at once. I was looking at our notes, and one of the things, we talk quite often about the meeting people where they are and this kind of slow progression. And one of the things I really like about our groups is because we don't work in schools and we don't follow school terms, we don't have like a clean slate of like, all these people are new. And I really, one of my favorite things is similar to when I like put a slug on my head, is very surreptitiously when we're doing anything with clay or mud, just painting my face and putting lines on it, or putting a big old handprint on my face or something, and seeing the new people or newer people sort of nudge their kids and go, oh, look, Lewis has done a look, oh, look. And then there's people that have been coming for years next to him going, has he? Oh, okay. Just absolutely over it.
But that is also a nice thing that people can either use clay when it is just at that stage where, like, if you put it in, you're just getting out of the bag, so it's not really going to stick to your hands that much, or you can add water to it and completely make yourself like a pair of gloves of wet clay from your, you know, tips of your fingers up to your elbows, as one child did the other day, and run around going, look at me. And like, for some people that is just not going to happen, like either ever or not for a long time, because that is so gross, like the sensory thing of that, and just, you know, no. But it's up to you. You can do that if you want to. Yes, and then you can go around flicking it at people or making amazing handprints on the trees.
They were amazing, weren't they? They're the, I don't want to say neatest, but the most defined handprints I've seen on a tree.
Yeah,
quite a long time. The tactile thing is interesting, isn't it? Because I think clay is one of those things that reminds me that the tactile thing is not fixed. If a child, if a learner of whatever age doesn't enjoy the feeling of clay on their hands 1 week, that doesn't mean they're not going to want to barefoot walk in it the following week. And just constantly kind of seeing where we are with it, you know, just, oh, do you want to do this today? Oh, do you want to do this? And it's not as with a lot of things, it's not linear. You know, I think lots of people, again, would see it as, oh, okay, if they can't touch it, then next week what we'll do is we'll smell it. And the week after that, and we'll do this. And the week after that, and we'll do this. And they're kind of, it's that linear view of education, isn't it? Rather than every week kind of just taking a moment and going, okay, what do you want to do with this today? Because they might have completely changed. And having access to more, in air quotes, jobs, means that you are, like you said, experiencing the material in different ways. If you have a lesson, like an art lesson, when I was a teacher, I did an art lessons with kids, and they would have the same board, the same piece of clay, the same size of it, and they would have like a little pot with, you know, they're like plastic scalpels and stuff.
Yeah.
And that you do that over and over, and they would sort of develop some familiarity with it. But it's not the same as digging it 1 week, you know, grinding it an hour later, and then the next week mixing it with water, and then a week after that you face paint with it, and you're just experiencing that material in so many more scenarios, I guess, than just the narrowly confined tick box. Yes, we did clay because we put it all on boards, and they all, you know, did it. It is so open-ended, isn't it?
Yeah. And time, you know, just having a whole day if you want to explore that material. Several days. Yeah, I was thinking today, I was like, okay, well, you know, this group are on a clay jag, like all of them are invested in that project in some way, aren't they? And I'm interested to see how long it will last, and because I'm sure it'll be one of those things that I'll come back to again and again for sure, but for now it feels like it is the main bulk of the session. That's what they want to do. And I wonder when it will kind of come to its natural end.
I think we will see a resurgence for at least the next couple of weeks, because I don't know whether we approached this in the right way, but the way we approached it was they had all day last week. So we have a day with lots of kids, and then some of them come for a second day, but not all of them. And we said to the big group day, we said, guys, we're going to get the clay from a bag out after lunch. Next week, we're going to fire the kiln, but that means that it needs a week to dry before it goes in the kiln. So if you want to put something in the kiln next week, you need to make it by like 2:00.
Yeah.
We'll see you later. And kind of left it open and said, oh, you know, a few times maybe checked in and said, the clay's on the table if you want to make it. Doesn't matter at all. I just don't want you to forget. But I know there are some children that didn't make something because they were really engaged in digging. And I think they will feel not left out, but they will feel like they sort of missed the boat when they see it that there's a huge, because the kiln is a huge fire.
Yeah.
And I think that will be engaging to them, and they will kind of go, oh, I'm not really as much of a part of this as I could have been.
Sorry.
What's that?
It was my phone dinging.
God,
I know.
I thought your house was on fire.
How unprofessional.
How unprofessional.
Yes, and I was also wondering whether it's like a... in fact, it definitely is, because we've talked about this before. Seasons-wise, in the winter, some days it's just too blooming cold, isn't it? You're going, oh, we could do it. Oh, no, clay is not going to be nice.
No, that's not how the conversation goes.
The
conversation goes, I go in and go, what about clay? We could do clay. I'm not wearing shoes. And then you go, it's 0 degrees. Or like you go, they're all tiny. They won't touch the clay. And I go, oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not good at judging temperature. Or more so that by the time people are starting to arrive, I've already been in the woods for about 2 hours and carried a tree up the hill, and so I'm boiling. And then you arrive and go, no, just so you know, it's cold and quite windy. They won't want to do it.
Yeah, and I know that through experience, through offering it and it being like, oh no, you're putting a lot of demands on me right now. I don't want my hands to get even colder and damp. Like, no.
Yeah, it's also something you need to consider, don't you, in terms of whatever length your session is, if it's 2 hours or 6 hours, when do you give access to the clay? When do you encourage the clay? Because if you're like, oh, in between break and lunch would be a great time to do digging, and then you're like, right, so they need to wash their hands really thoroughly before they do it, because they will have just eaten, and then you need to make sure they are absolutely spotless before they eat again, because they've been digging in the earth, and it's so much easier to just do it near the end of a session and then go, okay, bye, go home now.
Do you remember that time we did barefoot walking in the mud? And that was in early autumn. And then we made conker soap to wash feet with. So we had like loads of buckets of warm water with bubbly conker soap. That was so nice. We should do that again. And then one of the conkers has grown.
I saw your palpable excitement when you saw the...
Like, how the heck has a horse chestnut got into this forest? There are no horse chestnuts here. And I was like, aha, this is where we made the conker soap, in exactly this area. When we were trying to get the kids to smash
When you were smashing it, I was going, yeah. How weird.
Yeah. Amazing.
There's going to be music in there. I'm going to cut this bit of talking out. Children of the Forest is a lovely place, and you should definitely come here.
Find out about CPD courses at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Last podcast we talked about like going back and physically being ready.
Yeah.
We've done more than a couple of weeks now. Do you think you're back and ready?
I would say I'm still pretty darn tired at the end of the day. I mean, like so tired. This is what I do on a Wednesday. I come home, I like make sure that everyone has like taken their shoes off and is happy in some way. Then I go upstairs, I sit down, and then I lie down, and then I fall asleep. I fall asleep for about an hour, and then I wake up, and then I go downstairs and I have my tea. But I'm getting old, so that's what I do now. I have a little afternoon sleep when I get home. And then, you know, I was all like, so actually I've been preparing for my return to work after lockdown by doing some pretty intense HIIT. So, you know, cycling on my exercise bag, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, obviously, I'm not going to do that on the days where I work because that would be insane.
Of course not.
And I'm also not going to do that the day after I've been working because that would be...
No, don't be silly.
I'm really tired. And the weekend, I mean...
I've got to have a break on the weekend.
You've got to have a break, have a little lie-in, haven't you? You know, maybe Sunday. Sunday does sometimes happen, but it's gone from being like every other day to like, every fortnight, maybe. But I know I will get there, definitely.
You just got to recalibrate. That is
Recalibrate, get used to it. And barefoot shoes. I'm obsessed with barefoot shoes. Want more barefoot. Every single pair of shoes that I own to be barefoot shoes. That's really helping. That's really good.
I will say, I'm really enjoying mine, but they have split, and I've emailed the company, and I've like sent them some pictures of the little splits and said, should this have happened? But if they come back positively, I will be shouting from the rooftops and telling everybody on the podcast that they need to get these shoes because they're amazing. But I don't want to do it unless I'm absolutely confident.
I think I found some that I want, but they're a different brand.
No, that's okay.
So I think I'm going to get them.
We don't have a company brand. That's fine. Nobody's sponsoring us yet. Yet. I will say that I would say just before we started doing sessions again, I said to you, actually, I had about 3 weeks where I got really concerned because I'm about 6 foot tall and I hit 15 stone 9, which is the biggest I've ever been. And I had a real oh God, I'm getting a bit of a belly and I'm not enjoying that. And I really wanted to change it. And so I was like, okay, go change my food. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a bit more exercise because my type of exercise isn't cardio. It's like pick up the heavy thing once. I really like that. But having gone back to work only a couple of days a week, I have dropped what have we done? 3 weeks, and I've dropped 5 or 6 kilos, almost solidly of body fat, and I've just stopped caring about food, and I've gone back to no, I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat, and just enjoyable, oh yeah, it's nice having a job that's very physically taxing because you can eat a full tube of Pringles. Do you have full tube? This is going to be, people are going to be like, Lewis, you are utterly disgusting. A full tube of Pringles is 1,000 calories.
Really?
1,000 calories.
Wow.
And I would
plow. You managed to cram in so many calories.
I would plow through that in 10 minutes on a day, on a heavy day at work. I'd be like, get home, right? Tube of Pringles. I don't even chew them, right? I take the lid off and I pour it, and it's just because they're all stacked up. It just goes straight in. But yeah, 1,000 calories. I'm very excited because I've started a new gym, and I'm going to the new gym tomorrow, first thing in the morning, which is going to be exciting. Going to lift up heavy things. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Well, I'm going to, I don't know if I said on the podcast, in lockdown, when everything was the weirdest of the weird in lockdown, when everyone was just like, what planet are we living on? This is insane. I was going for runs in the evening, but then I would just get distracted by the telephone raven or that tree or whatever, or that bit of moss, or what is that thing? Oh, it's an owl pellet, and I've picked it up. Now it's all gross. I saw something bright orange on the ground, and I was like, what is that bright orange thing? Oh, it's a bit of plastic that an owl has eaten and then regurgitated into a pellet, and now I've got that all over my hand. That's gross. So it was kind of it became like a nature ramble, weird, sit in a tree for a bit. So
bit of connection.
I'm going for a run. It never really actually was a run. It was about 10 minutes of run and about 45 minutes of sitting in a tree, being weird, standing there and doing some breathing, and wondering whether anyone could see me and think that I was weird and reporting me to somebody. But I'm going to start doing that again, I think, because it did occur to me yesterday. I was like, why did I stop doing that? I really enjoyed doing that. Why does there need to be a national lockdown for me to do that?
Do you know what it is? I wouldn't be surprised if it's to do with, and we have talked about this before, it's the same thing as adults don't want to do forest school sessions, even though they should, because they feel guilty about spending time on themselves. And when everything's locked down, you can be completely shameless in I need to leave the house, and nobody will judge that. But once you start leaving the house for other reasons, to say you need to leave the house again is what? You need more mental health? You bastard.
Right.
Which it's not the case. I was thinking the other day how weird it was that at some point, and it feels like years ago now, but at some point the government just went, we're going to shut schools. And that now at the time was they're shutting schools. This is the craziest thing that's ever. And now I'm like, oh yeah, they shut the schools, didn't they? Some kids don't go to school. Some kids just never go to school. Never go to school again. Listen to me.
4 months.
Don't send your kids back to school. Never send your kids back to school. It's great. Yeah, perfect. I'm ready. I've got to go to bed now.
Yeah.
Because I've got to get up really early to go to the gym.
Enjoy it.
It was lovely to talk to you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Likewise. Night.
Ladies and gentlemen.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.